The Every Given Saturday tour was in Oregon, first time ever, in Eugene, in Autzen Stadium for UCLA versus Oregon yesterday. And I got some advice, some fresh, newly discovered advice for any of you out there who are listening to Pac-12 criticism. Just don't. Just don't. Take it from someone who's been out there. Ignore the folks who haven't been out there. I grew up, as some of you did, in the rural South. Some of you grew up in the mid-Atlantic states. Some of you grew up in Texas. But a lot of you who fit those descriptions, you haven't been out west to take in the football experience. And so you just draw conclusions based on what you see on TV. Sometimes it's valid. I'm not here lionizing the conference as a whole. I'm telling you there are places out there that if you walk into them and you close your eyes, they're indistinguishable from some of the great cathedrals that we're in a lot in the South. Autzen Stadium's one of them. Finally got to experience it yesterday. Only heard stories up until that point. And I can tell you what blew me away was, number one, you had a crowd of a little over 59,000 there yesterday, which is the fourth largest in the history of Oregon football. Forget the numbers for a second, because a lot of you would poo-poo that number. Forget about it. Stand on the sideline, if you can. Stand on the sideline like I did. Just close your eyes on third down. You wouldn't be able to tell if it's 59,000 or 89,000. Quite frankly, that place outdoes a lot of venues that have 30 or 40K more in that capacity number than Autzen Stadium does. They told me about it. I had to see it for myself. I saw it for myself. Very legitimate. But what blew me away even more was I have never been to the state. I've never been to the venue. I've never been to the city. We got recognized in Eugene every bit as much as we would get recognized in Tuscaloosa or Athens or Auburn, the places I grew up, which is a testament to you guys spreading the show from regionally to nationwide. So personally, I appreciate that, but we also had a really noteworthy football game that happened yesterday, and Meemaw famously said, "Foolish men draw conclusions in week one. Wise men make observations in week one." And I don't want to call folks foolish, but I know good and well some of you punted wholesale on Dan Lanning and that new coaching staff at Oregon when you saw what happened in week one against Georgia. And maybe, just maybe yesterday, is the first time you've really chosen to pay attention to them since then. It's a different looking team, isn't it? It's really crazy what happens if you give up on them, but they don't give up on themselves and they just get to work quietly over here in the corner for a little while. It's wild what can happen over the span of about a month and a half in this sport. They've played credible opponents since then. They've been against Brigham Young. They went on the road at Washington State. They played UCLA yesterday, most recently, and won 45-30. I am blown away, third time I said that this segment already, with the performance of Bo Nix, not just yesterday, although yesterday is about as good as you've seen him, but Bo Nix in general is one of the best stories in college football this year. And take it from someone who watched him through high school, certainly watched him at Auburn, and now I'm watching him, and it says Nix on the back of his jersey, but brother, the stat sheet does not indicate that that's the same human being. It is, though. As I've said about Hendon Hooker, as I am saying about Bo Nix, and as I would say about anywhere between half a dozen and a dozen other quarterbacks out there fully capable of doing big things, but who may find themselves in a less than desirable situation, sometimes a change of scenery is all it takes. Sometimes being paired with the right staff, the right supporting cast, the right offensive coordinator, the right head coach, the right culture is all it takes. There's nothing monumental they've changed about Bo Nix. Even if you get guys who really know ball at a granular level, if we got Kenny Dillingham in here and we sat him down, the offensive coordinator there at Oregon, and I said, Kenny, lay out all the differences, lay out what you fundamentally changed about Bo Nix, there wouldn't be a laundry list of things that they broke him down and rebuilt from the ground up. What they've done is they've put him in a position where he does not get assaulted every other play by defensive linemen. They've put very, very good receivers out wide. Troy Franklin is an emerging star nationally. They've got a culture that he can improve and develop in, which I would argue he never had at Auburn. And lastly, they've got a supremely talented player, which Nix always was. It kind of boggled the minds of people like me in the South who watched him in high school, even in a less than desirable position at Auburn, that he was never better than he was. But his mobility at quarterback is something that makes them really dangerous. Even on third down, I think you saw it a couple of times yesterday, they took UCLA and they broke their back in the early portion of the third quarter. Oregon went on a drive. I mentioned Meemaw earlier. Peepaw would have very much appreciated that 15-play, 82-yard, 7.5-minute drive. They threw the ball a grand total of 3 times. They lined up in I formation multiple times. And they basically, I think, announced to the rest of the world that doesn't know a whole heck of a lot about Oregon football right now, you know that we got flashy jerseys. You know we got a guy who can sling it here. Here's what else we can do. And what else they can do makes them very versatile. It makes them very multiple. And it does not make them an easy out. When you describe Oregon, in other words, there's not one thing. If we stop that one thing, they'll just do something else. And so it was impressive to watch them yesterday, but there was a false padlock stat here. Very false padlock stat. Imagine I'm down in Westwood Friday, and I knock on Chip Kelly's office door. And he says, come in. He says, I spoke to Chip Kelly briefly before the game yesterday. Fascinating quote he gave me. I'm going to keep it to myself. Fascinating quote. But that's for another time. That's probably a January or February story. But I knock on Chip Kelly's door. He says, come in. What if I were to tell him, Coach, you will not punt all day tomorrow. You will not have to punt the ball a single time. He would have invested every dollar they're paying him. It's illegal to do so. So in fantasy world, he would have bet every dime he has on Bruins straight up, Bruins money line. Why? Because it sounds pretty good, doesn't it? UCLA did not punt yesterday. UCLA was essentially done by the start of the fourth quarter in this game. And the reason is because Oregon was that good offensively. They have scored 40-plus points for the 6th consecutive game. That's the first time they've done that since 2014. It's back when they were a national championship contender every year. I don't think there's anything lost here for UCLA. Okay, it was not a back and forth instant classic down to the wire. It wasn't the game that some of us were hoping for just in terms of pure spectacle and entertainment value. But look at their schedule. This is a one-loss team now. This is the byproduct of taking care of business and beating Washington and beating Utah. You can afford to go to Eugene. It's the toughest place by a mile they'll play all year. You can afford to go up there and lose. Why? Because you got Stanford at Arizona State. Arizona, USC, the 19th is going to be a great game. And then they go to Cal at the end of the year. They can win every one of those games. They're still right in the thick of the Pac-12 championship race. Another thing that I was just thinking yesterday, I talked to some people about this today. You know, there's a lot of talk about job openings. There's a lot of talk about that Auburn job since I just mentioned them. Why wouldn't you call Chip Kelly? I know some of you just recoiled at that. I want to know why. I'm going to leave it there. I'm not telling you I have information on this. I'm saying I am presenting the idea. Why don't you call Chip Kelly? All these names that are unproven, all these names you don't know anything about, you know about Chip Kelly. Why wouldn't you call him? If you think that you can get him a great staff, if you think that you can equip him with the resources to recruit the right way, why not Chip Kelly? It's a known commodity. I will very much look forward to the detractors, and I know there are going to be a lot of them. I just want you to give me the reasons why. Why not Chip Kelly? What a stretch coming up, though, in the Pac-12. There's really good football being played out there, guys. I grew up in Fortson, Georgia. I get it. I'm just telling you, there's some really entertaining stuff happening out there, and you've got now, Jesse, do we have the updated odds? I don't even know. You may have showed it already. There are the updated odds to win the Pac-12 championship. Oregon is now favored to win the Pac-12 championship. They are plus 25, and USC next up at plus 250. They do not play in the regular season. UCLA is now third. They do play USC in the regular season. And Utah is fourth at plus 400. They, I believe, play Oregon in the regular season. Do they, Jesse? Do they? Let's see. Boy, I'm calling up a lot of things that I didn't tell them I was going to call up. Okay, they don't have it. Okay, so there's a 50-50 shot that they play them. How about that? I think they do. Yeah, they go up there and play them. Okay, so there's still a lot to be sorted out there. I'm just telling you, there are a lot of new hires out there. And there are a lot of mixed results out there. I think Oregon nailed their hire. Not just with Lanning. I think they got a really, really good collection of folks out there. And I think that this is not a mirage. I don't think this is year one. You're doing it with someone else's players, that stuff. We've seen that before. I don't think that's what this is. So I would very much keep my eye on that team. You probably cast the mold for them a little bit too early. I was guilty of that too. I watched week one just like everyone else. I didn't predict this. but they got right back to work, man. They didn't let that faze them. It wasn't even a little learning curve period where they struggled. They took their beating, and now they're handing them out. And that's Oregon football right now. So it's been really, really fun to watch. We had a great time out there. Great time. We'll be back again. We'll be back. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. Make sure you like the video, and please subscribe to the channel. Not just for me. That's how we keep this entire thing free.